Quick one. Mina here. Thank you for watching this episode. I appreciate you. Thank you for all your support. One thing that you can do for me is to please hit the subscribe button below. I promise you that if you hit subscribe, I'm going to work hard to make sure that my episodes are really good, that will get better and better. So, do we have a deal? Okay, back to the episode.
That business, to cut a long story short, that business ended up costing me around about $1.2 million over 24 months. I worked it out about being about $1 a minute, asleep or awake, for 2 years. And I learned a lot in that stage. I learned a lot about myself. I learned a lot about my relationships. I learned a lot about...
what did you learn about yourself?
That I was more resilient than I thought, and that you're good as long as you just wake up and just keep doing small steps, making small plans, just writing things to do today on a piece of paper. If you think about the whole problem and the thing that's... Because it nearly pulled down my other businesses as well. Thankfully, the bank was sort of generally understanding, but I ended up slowly, methodically walking backwards out of that business. And it wasn't the end of me, but it could have been if I had a different approach to the situation in front of me. So I learned that I can keep a cool head in crisis, which I'm happy about. I learned that even a huge mistake can be a life lesson, which I will never make again. I would have liked to think I could learn that lesson by going to a course, but probably not. So yeah, it's a life lesson, and we're all going to die one day, and it was an adventure.
If you get into that situation again, how different are you going to act?
Well, it first starts is around due diligence. Don't fall in love with the concept of having a business or owning a business and skip all the core details around the fundamentals of a business. I did have an accounting firm help me with my due diligence, and they did raise some warnings about the inventory, but they didn't reinforce them with me. And me being an entrepreneur, I was so in love with the idea of taking this business and renovating it and making it way better, because it was pretty crappy at the time. I thought I could do this a lot better. I jumped over a few core details. I should never have bought the inventory at cost. I should have bought it at fractions of cents in a dollar, because a lot of it was aged. It was what we call slob stock, and as a result, I've got a business that helps with that now. And so there was something that came out of the ashes of that.
How did you get up from that setback? How did you literally get it up?
How did I actually
survive
physically? I started out by removing all the costs that I could. I started out by having very frank discussions and honest discussions and being a good person with my landlords, and they thankfully were on board with what I told them. I was reasonable with them rather than hiding things, and they could understand that. They'd been in business themselves, or were business people. I did what I call asset stripping. I sold everything that wasn't bolted down that we didn't need, just for cash flow. And then I started talking to other people in the business and tried to see if they would want some of my stuff. And then I just found a buyer who would buy the brand and the business. And I got myself absolved of that situation before it really tanked me.
Like, what are the biggest mistakes business owners make today?
I think, like I said, they fall in love with ideas or concepts. We're all human beings with emotions, and we're influenced by what we see, and we think sometimes we're missing out on something, or we need to be doing this, without thinking the fundamentals, the practicalities of what they're trying to do. The other big mistake, and this is from my own lessons, is not understanding the structure of businesses and the differences between being shareholders and directors, having a proper shareholders agreement, understanding a market properly. In advertising, which I've got a background in, you see lots of business models, and some of them look really cool, right? And like, wow, those guys are kicking it, right? I would like to be in that. They know what they're doing, and no business is as easy as it looks. If you're looking at somebody going, wow, they're killing it, and they're actually probably good operators running a good business, and they've got depth of knowledge. You're sitting there on the outside saying, I don't know anything about this business, but it looks awesome, I want to be in it. You're in dangerous territory right there. So do a little bit more DD on due diligence on what you're looking at. That's my thing. The good thing about getting older and a bit wiser is you get a little bit more slower to, a little bit more guarded, I suppose. When I was younger, I started my first company at 28, and you're sort of suitably commercially naive, and that's a good thing and a bad thing, depending on how you look at it. Being commercially naive about an opportunity means you get into it in the first place, and there's probably opportunities I took up that I wouldn't take up now, but I made them work because I just had to make it work. These days, with a bit more behind you, you go, no, I'm not doing that. That's not gonna work for me.
Could any 28-year-old listening now be able to be ready to start a business and not fail? Is it even possible
to start a business and not fail?
Yeah, at 28. I mean, some people are obviously more savvier than others, but I can only imagine if you are at 28, you're going to make lots of mistakes.
Yeah, the good thing is you've got time on your side to recover from your mistakes. The sad thing about starting a business when you're 60 or 50 is that, I mean, there's lots of entrepreneurs in their 50s. You make different mistakes and you have different time frames on how to fix those. A 28-year-old might start a business without an exit plan or thinking about what they're trying to build towards exit. They might just go, this is going to be amazing and I'm going to build an income for myself. A 50-year-old's probably thinking about who is going to buy this business right from the start because I need to have an exit. And that's a healthy way of looking at starting a business.
Well, this is a new concept, is thinking about the end before you start.
Yeah.
And for a 20-year-old, a 28-year-old and a 50-year-old, that applies both, right? Or what is your advice if someone who's 28, 30, even 35 wanting to start a business? And what are some of the things that they should be thinking about first before they even start? And this could be like an entrepreneur, an SaaS, SaaS, or
well, the saying that you're talking about is
or a marketing agency you've done.
Well, it's begin with the end in mind, and I've always had that right from the start. I think I learnt that way back when before I even had my business. Begin with the end in mind. I have these sort of one-liners for myself, and you need to do that. It's like and that helps to structure how you want to build that business.
You look at the Wyndi 10 years ago, 14 years ago, going, oh yeah, this is what I used to be. What lessons do you think that you've been able to capture throughout those 14 years? You go, I've learned that lesson now, and this lesson, definitely that lesson. And I would have loved to have learned that, or would have loved somebody have told me that when I first started my business.
I reckon if you look back and you don't cringe, then something is wrong. I definitely look back and think, oh my gosh, what was I thinking? My husband and I are very different. I'm visionary, innovative. So when I came in, I was looking at all of the things that were wrong in the accounting space and how we could fix it. My husband, he's in finance and he loves sales. So he would do the work, make sure the books were clean, and he'd go and sell us, basically. Where we are not any good, or hadn't been in the past, because we're definitely better now, is we did not like process. And so it was very much hire someone, just chuck them in the deep end and they'll figure it out. And sometimes they did. And sometimes they did not.
They sank.
But, as soon as we had a good person who had it all sorted and they left, the next person came in and then they'd either sink or swim. There was no continuity or consistency. And that really was not good for our clients.
Yeah.
It's like, I don't want to have to tell you again. I don't want to have to do this. Why aren't you doing what the other person did? Well, we didn't have any real proper processes and systems in place. And I just was not in the mood to try and write process. And neither was my husband. And I'm not an accountant. So it's not like I could write accounting process either.
Yeah.
So for many years, we went processless. Right. And I'm glad to say we've sorted it now. Great processes. But we learned that, one, telling ourselves we're not process people does not help. You've got to tell yourself you're a process person. I am a process person. I can do this, because then you just get in and do it. Or you get someone who knows the process. Teach someone, get them to write the process, and then you check the process. So yeah, it really is very much about sort of what you say, but that would probably be one of the biggest.
How has it changed your business?
Well, this last 12 months, my husband and I spent 5 weeks on holiday overseas and we barely got a phone call. So I figure if we can do that, and then we've just this year spent about 4 weeks away. So I figure if we can do that, then there must be some pretty good process systems in place. Ellie and I don't have to really do so much in the business anymore. Everything's sort of documented. People can come in and pick up jobs or pick up clients and they know exactly what needs to be done. And we're constantly talking about how we can improve a process. And it's not like everything needs to be documented. Just the real core stuff definitely to start with. And then you pick up all of the other bits as you go along. But it's definitely been the biggest focus for us over the last few years.
Remind me again, you are a staff of how many? A company of how many?
Oh, we have 7 of us in New Zealand, but we have about 3 that work for us permanently offshore. And then I have about 15 in Samoa.
Fantastic. So overall, you're responsible for
all of those people. 20 odd or whatever.
Does that make you nervous?
It's a privilege. It does. It doesn't really make me. Actually, it does make me nervous because I have to pay the bills. Like, everything is riding on us.
How do you handle the stress?
I have a great husband who we vent to when we need to vent to. But I think when you have got processes and systems in place, we've got a great accountability chart. So everybody knows what their job is, what their KPIs are. It's all measured weekly. So I have data like you wouldn't believe. So I can kind of be on top of things without having to be everywhere. And it's very easier now to see when things are not going right, and you can pick it up really quickly and get on top of it.
How do you measure your KPIs in your systems?
We have it all in a system. Literally.
Like a digital way of doing things?
Yeah. So we use the EOS systems, the Entrepreneur Operating System, and they have different apps that work with their system.
Right. Oh, I got you.
So all of our data goes into there. Everything is visible. So all of my team can see our business plan, the numbers that we're trying to achieve, even our profits we're trying to achieve, like everything's visible. Everyone can see what everybody's role is, what everybody's KPIs are. And there's very green or very red boxes that will say whether you're on track or off track.
Wow.
So there's nowhere really to hide. And the great thing about it is Ellie and I are also part of that. So you can see if we are not doing what we are supposed to do too, and they are allowed to hold us accountable as well.
That's so profound. I mean, just by you talking about the system, this process, this whole transformation for your business sounds like that it's worth every single penny that you've invested into it.
Every single penny.
Yeah.
It's
amazing, eh?
The time freedom that we've got now, I think some of our stress comes from the unknown. You're worried about this and you're worried about that. And then when you actually see the data or you really look into it, you're like, oh, okay, well, I didn't really have that much to worry about. Well, it's all very clear. So I'm like, okay, well, everything's green. I don't really need to worry.
Yeah.
I can sleep at night.
Yeah.
Which is all we want as an entrepreneur, right? Is to sleep at night.
So,
the only time I really have to worry is when I start seeing red.
Yeah.
And then that's when you start to figure out what you need to do. But the great thing about the system is that back in the day, it used to be me figuring out the answers or me and my husband figuring out the answers. The way that we've structured our business now is there's a group of us that come together. This is the problem. Let's get to the heart of what the actual issue is, and then let's put some actions in place to solve it. So suddenly it becomes a shared issue, which takes so much pressure off Ellie and I as the owners to not have to have all the answers, to have to solve all of the problems. We all, whoever is in that team, we do it together.
Who's part of this fantastic shared accountability group? Is it like your board or other employees, or who is it?
All other employees.
Right.
We have different departments, so different people sit in different teams. But so even we have an SLT, me and Ellen, we have 2 other people, one of our senior accountants who's an associate, and then we have what an EOS term is like an integrator, which is sort of like a CEO. So I guess one of the challenges we've had back in the day is that I'm the ideas person. I'll like have a million ideas every day, and then I'll like throw them at my team, and they'll just be like, oh my gosh, all of these changes. So then they're trying to do all these changes, and then literally the next week I'm like, no. And so my team are getting really frustrated with me, and they're like, okay, I'm a little over this, Wyndi. So now we have a person who I tell all my ideas to, and then they hold them for a bit, and then they come back to me, okay, do we still want to do this? Or they work out the viability of it and what we're going to do, so that I don't get in the team's way with my lots of crazy ass ideas that I have.
What's the name of the role of that person?
They're called the integrator. That's what the EOS call it. You can kind of call it a CEO. They're an implementer, basically. They decide what is going to get implemented, and then they make sure that whatever gets implemented and is done.
So many things. I definitely would have taken more time with my own team and my people.
Is it like a training, time to train your people, time to brief them about vision and the goals, and having systems in place? Or is it being more cautious, taking too many risks and investments? And I understand that franchise is, if you can maybe enlighten me about the franchise and the services that you provided. It's property and commercial, or what did you guys offer?
Yeah, so we were the franchisee.
Yeah.
So the franchisor being Bayleys.
Yes.
They offered the brand, the training,
yes,
the auctions, the foundation, the research, the digital, the web. The phenomenal platform, and still today, a phenomenal platform. So we would pay essentially a royalty, a franchise fee for that benefit. Our job was to run the agency business. So that's a people business ultimately.
It is, isn't it?
That's, while the product might be a residential home or a commercial office or whatever in between, ultimately it's about people. And my customer as a business owner is both the buyer of the home or the seller of the home, but it's also our brokers that are representing us. They are equally our customers, right? So I think to answer your question about was it strategy, was it investment, was it vision that was... No, I think it was people. I think it was actually coming right back to the most valuable thing that we have and giving them the respect and the time and the support that they needed. And I fell short on that.
So it's about taking time to build those relationships. Yeah. Isn't that fascinating when we look back at it?
But yeah, not just build, I think genuinely care, and want the best for them, and understanding that the way that you work is different to the way I work. Understanding that, you can have...
the way you process information, the way you want information to be handed over to you. Yeah.
So I've got a broker that wants to know from me, they've got 2 minutes, they want to know the high-level details, they want it straight between the eyes, they want it like laid out. I've got another broker who's equally as capable that wants to sit down for a half an hour and have a coffee, and they want to tell you their problems and share with you their ideas, and both are equally valuable, right? Both are huge contributors to the business. So it's ensuring that style that works for your customer is actually what your how you manage and lead.
Quick one, Mina here. Thank you for watching this episode. I appreciate you. Thank you for all your support. One thing that you can do for me is to please hit the subscribe button below. I promise you that if you hit subscribe, I'm going to work hard to make sure that my episodes are really good, that will get better and better. So, do we have a deal? Okay, back to the episode. What is it that
drove them too hard without giving them the structure and the tools to enable them to succeed? So, and I'll give some context around that. So, the success that I experienced early on in my career was based upon me having the initiative and the gumption to go out and find the tools to succeed. And so I was very much left alone. I was independent. And that was probably a consequence of the time to a degree as well. It was like, here's your target, best of luck. And that was kind of leadership back in the 90s.
And you just left them. Yeah.
Exactly. And the theory was that the strong will thrive and survive and the rest will leave, and that's okay. And so, rightly or wrongly, my growth and the books that I was consuming in those days were not on leadership. That came for me later, once I acknowledged the importance of team.
Right.
It was more about mechanics of business and investing and making money, but none of those were leadership things. And so I had a couple of 3 people that could have been great with a little more support and a little more structure around them. Funnily enough, that then led me, once I realized that was probably the right formula, to hiring people that were very bright but not that motivated. And that was another mistake that I made. There's a matrix that's been built, like an XY matrix from McKinsey, and it's the will-skill matrix, the will and skill. So you have will, which is, motivation on one column, and then skill on another one. I add to that now values, by the way. So I have a Venn diagram of 3 of those things. Really critical to understand alignment with someone's values you bring into your business, or as an investor or as an advisor, whatever it might be. The skill or the competency of that individual and the motivation of that individual. And it's got to be appropriate for the role. I use an example of having a super highly motivated but a low capability support person, like someone who's an administrator, for example. You could be a wonderful administrator and fulfill that role incredibly, but if you want to have aspirations above your station and you get promoted into a role that you're incapable of doing, you hit what's called the Peter principle, which means that you rise not to the level of your competence, but the level of your incompetence. So you come up and you rub against the ceiling, you're promoted above that, you'll fail above that level unless you continue to invest in your growth and you understand the things that you can do to support the success in that particular role. So back to the will skill matrix, I was finding people that were highly skilled, intelligent, very bright people that didn't have the motivation. It turns out that it's very hard to motivate someone. They need to motivate themselves, like driving motivation into other people. And that's a really critical lesson, by the way. If you have people that are in revenue generating roles, salespeople or performance marketers or traders, people that are making money for the company, but there is a number that you can attach to them. And my belief and experience is that they need to be highly motivated. CEOs need to be highly motivated. They need to be. So those are some of the bad decisions that I made. There's some other investment decisions that I made that haven't worked out terrifically well.
What's your biggest failure, do you think?
What's my biggest failure?
That is not really failure, clearly, because failure is lesson. In my view, failure is having a good lesson and you learn from it. But at the time, you might have thought that this would have been a massive failure, a massive setback in terms of business. What could that be?
Yeah. There's 2 that spring immediately to mind. So the first is that I didn't do a great job in my first marriage. So that's me being quite personal here, but it is relevant. And, the growth things that I was consuming in those days before and during my marriage were still a little bit about leadership, a lot about making more money, a lot about investing. Philosophy came into the mix as well. But I wasn't focused enough on being a better human being. And as a consequence, my marriage suffered. And I was also too focused on work as well. So I wasn't spending enough time or enough energy on that relationship. And back to the observation before that I'm a fiercely independent person, that was at the cost of the relationship as well. I've taken that lesson into my now marriage, and it's a very, very different situation. So that was one. Another was that I got into a business with someone that had a very different values set to me. And once the values differential became clear to me, I didn't extricate myself as quickly as possible from that relationship. I spent another 6 to 9 months to try and encourage that person into the same place that I was existing in, and they didn't want to change. A few values is one of those much talked about, but not terrifically well understood things. They're the critical building blocks of our decision making and how we live as a human being and the frame of reference that we have for the world, and everything's laid upon it. Your values can change, but you need to want them to change, and it's not the easiest thing in the world to go through that. And so sometimes people's values change through external events, death of a loved one, illness, relationship breakup. Those are kind of the three things that will lead someone to have a bit of a look in the mirror moment. But unless those things have happened, or if they go, do you know what, I'm just not happy with the person that I'm being or how I've been living my life, then those are the two things that will lead to a values change. And so spent a lot of money and, had a painful experience in getting out of that business.